What's going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guys, Derek and Cody, with you as always. Guys, we have another video here, and it felt like a lot of news came out today for the Indianapolis Colts. We're recording this literally during the Bengals-Chiefs game right now. Amongst all the different NFL games on today, we're talking about Colts news here, and a couple different things came out, and some good news, I think, Cody, for at least you and I's perspective. Shane Steichen, the offensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles, has confirmed that he will have a second interview with the Indianapolis Colts this next week. For a lot that's gone on over the last week, Cody, we've been discussing like the coaches that are getting these second interviews all this last week. A bunch of guys that I think you and I could probably live with not being the head coach, besides maybe one or potentially two guys. But probably it feels really good for at least one of the big three or big four guys that you and I wanted is finally getting a second interview.
Yeah, absolutely. And really the best offensive mind, if you will, out of the potential head coach candidates, right? Steichen, we know, offensive coordinator from Philadelphia, and we know what he was able to do this year with Philadelphia. Not just, in the past game, we already know about, Jalen Hurts, what he was able to do with him, but also just the run game. Like Philly was such a well-balanced team this year with what they were able to do with Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, all those guys back there. And it just, for me, for Steichen, it's just great to have a guy that I would be more than comfortable, and I'm sure you would say the same, Derek, about, pairing a Steichen with a rookie quarterback, say a CJ Stroud, a Will Levis, whoever you want there, whoever the Colts end up getting, you feel good about, a guy that took Jalen Hurts, who was a very questionable quarterback coming into this year, right? There's a lot of questions like, should Philly, if he doesn't develop this year, should they go draft a quarterback this next year? That was a legit conversation that people were having about Hurts. Some people were on board last year, some weren't. So it seemed like the Philly fan base was kind of split. Some people were kind of split on how they felt about Jalen Hurts, but Steichen did a great job this year with him and just his development, and obviously put together one of the best offenses in the NFL. And he also called plays, which is huge for this Philly offense. And it's a big reason why we sit here right now and Philly's going back to its second Super Bowl in the last 5 years. So, if that tells you anything right there about how good Shane Steichen is, as a play caller, as an offensive mind. And so really excited to get him back into the building. Wouldn't mind trying to go for Brian Callahan again. We've talked about that. He's one of our favorite prospects as well. What he's been able to do with Joe Burrow as well. And as we stand right now, we don't know how that game is going to end out, but all that to say, in terms of Steichen, really glad that we got him in here. I think he clearly, we're going to come out with kind of a tier list, if you will, a power rankings of the head coaches who are getting second interviews with the Colts. He's right there, Derek. He's right there in the top 2 to 3, I think, for us. Potentially one. I don't know how that video is going to go, and I don't know how some of you people feel, but I definitely feel like he's one of the top guys on the market. And there are some questions with the whole how the Frank Reich thing went down. People are like, man, does Steichen, because of how Nick Sirianni felt about the whole Frank Reich situation, will Steichen even take the interview with Indianapolis? And it definitely seems like he is, and is one of the top candidates here. So very excited about getting him in the building. Really interested to see how that second interview goes here. For people who aren't familiar, now that Philly is in the Super Bowl this week, Steichen will have availability, so the Colts will probably meet with him for a second time. And I don't know when they're going to make their decision here, Derek, but it's great to know that one of the best candidates out there is interviewing with the Colts right now and is considered one of the top candidates. So really excited about Steichen, the potential there, and looking forward to hear how that second interview went with him.
Yeah, you talked about the development. Shane Steichen, what he's been able to do with Jalen Hurts. You're right. They went from, Jalen Hurts, there's question marks about, how good Jalen Hurts can actually become. He's going to be the biggest obstacle to them being a Super Bowl team next year. And sure enough, Jalen Hurts is the quarterback that this team needed to make it to the Super Bowl. Sure enough, they are. And now Jalen Hurts might get the biggest extension that we have ever seen in NFL history after this season. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, again, Steichen most likely won't be the last guy that we'll see with this, but nevertheless, he is a guy that is going to be coming back in for a second interview. And another one as well today that is coming back for a second interview is Green Bay special teams coach Rich Bisaccia, who was an interim head coach at one point. He is coming back as well for another interview. I don't know how you feel about this one, Cody. Again, just feels like another name that, like, just doesn't seem like. I'm surprised that he is one of these candidates. I don't know what to expect from this, but nevertheless, Rich Bisaccia is getting a second interview with the Colts. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised, like you said, but I'm honestly okay with it just because, you look at what he did as the interim with the Raiders when that whole crapshoot went down with John Gruden and all that stuff, and how he was able to, it's tough. We already know, having an interim coach, that's tough to do really anything. And Bisaccia was one of those stories where it was a pretty good success story where he had the Raiders playing hard down the stretch. They actually, unfortunately for Colts fans, they beat us, and then they were able to get into the playoffs after, kind of just season, up to that point. Bisaccia comes in and steps in as interim, and those guys played hard, man, and they were not an easy out in the playoffs either, if you remember. I mean, they were really competitive in that loss in the wild card round. So, yeah, I mean, Bisaccia, I don't mind it because he has some experience there. But I was a little bit surprised because I do think there's some other candidates I would probably prefer to get second interviews, but probably before him. But certainly can't go wrong with a guy that proved, if Jeff Saturday's kind of the other direction where it's like, in 8 games he played, he was terrible and the team was terrible. Bisaccia kind of was the opposite, right? Where he came into a kind of a crappy situation as well and turned, essentially like had the team playing their best football near the end of the year. So, yeah, definitely don't mind having him in here for a second interview. I think he's definitely a guy that should get some consideration. Don't think he's really my, one of my top 3 candidates, but I'm glad that they're giving him a second look at least. I mean, heck, if they're going to give Jeff Saturday a second look, might as well give Bisaccia a second look, right?
Yeah, I mean, might as well give everybody a second look if you're
Right.
going to talk about having Jeff Saturday in there. But nevertheless, yeah, Rich Bisaccia is going to be coming back, so that's another name. The Colts did say, Cody, that they were limiting it down to 7. So with those 2 coming back in, that leaves one name left for them to bring in a second interview for another candidate. So if the Colts remain on just that 7, the big question, who's it going to be? We don't know yet. Yeah. There are names like the 2 names that we're watching with this game right now, Brian Callahan and Eric Bieniemy. Those are 2 names that, are still linked very highly to the Colts. You could think of Mike Kafka. That's a name that we haven't heard of in a while. We saw, Martindale get another one before Kafka. So I'm surprised by that one. We'll obviously continue to keep an update on that as we hear about it more. So don't worry. As soon as we hear something, guys, you will hear it from us. Last news of the day for the Indianapolis Colts, and it comes from the players' side of thing. So Colts star running back Jonathon Taylor underwent ankle surgery this past Wednesday. Just got reported literally earlier this morning. Apparently it was called a arthroscopic debridement, which is basically described as a non-invasive surgery, which means they don't really go too deep into the ankle, but it cleans out like extra cartilage in the ankle. I mean, we saw, Cody, that through the majority of this year, Jonathon Taylor was dealing with some ankle issues. He tried to come back. It didn't really go as planned. It only got worse. And he might have, potentially gotten an infection in there at one point. I don't know at this point, but the positive side of it, that surgery was extremely successful. And Jonathon Taylor and the Colts have said that they are extremely confident that Jonathon Taylor will be back for training camp. So they say they expect him to be 100% by the time training camp rolls around. Cody, obviously, Jonathan Taylor not taking too much time to make sure that this issue got cleaned up only a couple weeks later, and he realized that something needed to be done. Now, I'm going to just say this for everyone out there that's going to immediately jump to the Shaq Leonard situation and compare these two. I'm just letting y'all know right now, Shaq's injury was severely worse than what Jonathan Taylor was dealing with. They both required surgery, but the level of the surgery is the most important factor here. Jonathan Taylor's was a non-invasive. They were working on Shaq's nerves. So that's a very different level of surgery, and it takes a lot more time. But after hearing this, Cody, I mean, at first I'll admit I was a little worried about the words surgery in with Jonathan Taylor, but I am happy to hear it was successful, and I expect him to be back 100% in no time. What makes of you in this news?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that he did something. I'm glad that he felt like he needed to do something because it was very obvious that ankle was bothering him all year, and he just wasn't the same player that he was the year prior because of that injury, and obviously other factors as well. So Jonathan Taylor, young guy, I think he's a fast recoverer. He's going to be fine. I don't feel, obviously the word surgery is a scary word in itself, but I just feel like Jonathan Taylor's going to be totally good here. And I think Colts fans were a little scarred when we hear surgery because, first off, the Andrew Luck stuff, and then obviously last year with Shaq Leonard as well. It's just kind of like, I don't even know if I can trust the doctors sometimes because it seems like sometimes, we say things and then it's completely different. But I do feel like this one here and that it's not invasive makes me feel like this is just something that, is a basic thing for anybody struggling with an ankle during the season, something pretty minor in the grand scheme of surgeries. So fully expect him obviously to be back and be at 100%. And I'm glad that he's deciding to do that now. He's got, months and months of recovery here. And I don't think it'll even probably take that long. I think he'll probably be ready for the spring if I was guessing, and maybe they'll just hold him out to be cautious. But yeah, I mean, Jonathan Taylor, I'm glad that he's doing this so he could be the healthiest he can be for the 2023 season. And obviously wish him well in his recovery there. But yeah, I initially didn't see this news. So when you said it, I was kind of like held my breath a little bit like, oh crap, Jonathan Taylor, ankle surgery. Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, we've already had one star player have to deal with that. We kind of don't want to have to deal with another one, right?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, good to see JT holding down the fort. I think he'll be fine. And good to see him doing that now as opposed to, a couple months from now. Glad that he recognized that. And just, I feel like it's like you're almost practicing an abundance of caution with JT, which you definitely should, because he's shown he's healthy. He's one of the best backs in football. So, yeah, wish him well in his recovery, but not really overly concerned, and won't be overly concerned until, obviously they give me a reason to. So, yep, feel good about Jonathan Taylor. Wish him well.
Absolutely. Well, that's going to be the updates, guys, for today. Sorry we couldn't get this video out a little bit sooner. It's just how it was today for us, but we're getting this out now. We'll have some more videos up in the upcoming days, ranking our favorites of the head coaching candidates so far, and free agent draft pick news and things of that nature. So keep up with the support on that. We greatly appreciate you guys. And as always, go Colts.